Hi everybody, Kevin at Bear Creek. Got a quick little video for you today. I have 3 woodenware project tips for you, and they're very simple, and they're based off of what I use for equipment, maybe not what you use for equipment, so you'll have to kind of proceed accordingly or dismiss accordingly, however you want to do it. But I'll just get right to it. My last video, I had these migratory covers here that I installed feeder plugs in. And yeah, I'll provide a link to that. But today what I did was I went around and I installed cleats around the outside of the rim. And I'll explain why. These are 3/8 of an inch, and they go around the entire perimeter of the inside of your hive cover. Now, if you use an inner cover, a flexible inner cover like I do, or if you don't use any inner cover, for that matter, some people don't want to use it, but I use a flexible inner cover, as you know. And you have a hive top like this. When you have frames that might have a little bit of burr comb on them, you get a kind of it's bumpy ride up top here, and it can kind of hump in the middle somewhere up here, unless you are really diligent about scraping it. And if you got a lot of hives and doing that, you only do that on so many occasions. But what this does is these cleats will get you above that, so that when you set your hive cover down, you have a nice clean seal around the outside edge of this hive box. You can see that. And that way you don't have any gaps where bees will be coming and going, or in the worst aspect, robbing. For that matter, when you have honey supers on, you won't have bees going in from other colonies stealing your honey. And it's especially important if you have a skateboards on, and you never want to have any kind of gaps. So that aids in that. The second benefit to this is that if you have a hive with frames on here, you can put a pollen patty down, put your inner cover over, and now you have a little bit of space to get above that pollen patty, so that you don't have that big hump, and you can set this down. And if you do have, if there's a little bit of a thing, you can sort of press it down a little bit and still get that seal around the outside edge. In the wintertime also, it's important to get that seal on the top, so you don't have a draft coming through the top of your hive, on top of the top of the cluster of bees. So that's important as well. So that's tip number 1. And what I did was and if you saw this at the beginning of the video in the fast rendition, I just took some 1x, which was 3/4 of an inch thick, and I just cut it down to 3/8 of an inch strips, and then cut them to length. I cut the outside, the exposed dimension, the full length of the inside dimension, so that you don't have any butt joints exposed to the weather. Now, you don't have to paint this. You shouldn't have to, but you can, and it ain't gonna hurt, and it might be even a benefit. And I very well might throw a coat of paint on the outside, just so that it lasts a little bit longer, but it's not something that you have to do. And if you have a pail feeder on, the bees have an extra area to congregate around here to get access, standing room only, to your feeder hole. So that's tip number 1. Okay. Tip number 2 involves the hive bottom. Now I have I bought these kits from I bought, I don't know, 15 of them from Man Lake earlier this summer, and I put them all together. And one thing I kind of forgot to do is I am not a fan of porches on hives. These bottom boards measure out at about 22 inches. Now a Langstroth hive is 19 7/8, which leaves you about 2 1/8 roughly of added board that sticks out from your box, and it's called a porch and a landing board where bees land and come into your hive, come in and out of your hive. Now I love to observe. I've watched bees come in and out of hives for, going on 4 years now. And I can't say as they really use the porch all that much. I mean, they even sell an extension on these that you can set this on that has a bevel on it. It's kind of like like a landing board. And they sell those for another, I don't know, 15 bucks a piece or 20 bucks a piece. And I bought a couple of those when I first started. And I'm here to tell you, other than hanging off of them on a hot day, they never used those landing boards. You might see a couple crawling around on it or something like that, but is it really necessary? Now, obviously we have, man-made boxes, man-made tops, man-made, bottoms. But in the wild, have you ever seen a porch on a hive? You see them, bees go into gaps in soffits, holes in masonry block, holes in the siding. No landing boards that I know of that they use or need. So this little video right here shows a couple of my hives that I've got set up out in my apiary this winter. And you'll see one doesn't have a porch, and you'll see the other one does. And you'll notice the difference. The one with the porch has snow that is stacked up and blocking the lower entrance, which is not a good thing to have in the upper Midwest. I'm from central Wisconsin here. That's where my bees are. And we have a lot of snow, a lot of cold. And I need that lower entrance venting to vent my hive to keep moisture from building up in my hive too much. I need that venting. So having it blocked up is not a good thing. Also in the summertime, if you ever notice when it rains, you'll notice water, it gets pooled up right there on that porch. And you'll see bees flipped over dead because they couldn't flip themselves back over. They get stuck to the wood, the dampness sticks into the wood. Not a ton of bees, but a few of them, and that always bugged me. So I never understood the need for a porch. I think people just figure that humans have porches on their houses. Why wouldn't bees need porches on theirs? I just don't see it as a necessity. So what I did was I cut off the porches on all my hives. And if you saw the video earlier, you saw me sawing these off. And this is the end that I cut off. I cut it off exactly the dimension of my hive. And I'll show you that real quick here. That goes on just like this. And, I've watched my bees come in and out. They land in this hole just fine. Now, when I have a full, strong hive, I leave this wide open. You can still put your entrance reducer in if this is a weaker hive, or certain times of the year when you want to help stop some robbing. But they do not need a porch. Just my own take on it. But I thought that you might want to see the project that I did and the tip and the reasoning that I'm giving you. Also, wanted to show you. Now, when they gave me this kit, it came with, whoops, this side of the board is 3/4 of an inch deep. This side of the board is if you can see that profile there, is 3/8 of an inch deep. And they call this their winter configuration. Now, when I first got these, I didn't really pay attention. I'm like, winter configuration, that didn't compute to me. But then it dawned on me, and let me show you this is the 3/8 inch profile right there that I cut off. And this is a strip right here that they gave to fill in that back for what the back of the hive sits on. So when I cut this board off, I had to make up some shims to put in here to replace the back shim that I took off. But one of the things a revelation that I came to was the fact that when you put a hive box on here on what they call their winter configuration, it's only 3/8 of an inch. Now, I use hardware cloth in my hives and my entrances in the wintertime as a mouse guard. I cut hardware cloth into a V and I jam it into the entrance in the 3/4 inch entrance, and that serves as a mouse guard. Mice cannot get into a number 4 hardware cloth. It's the holes are 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch, and a mouse can't get through a 1/2 inch hardware cloth. Believe it or not, that's their limit. So I started thinking about it, and this is only 3/8 of an inch wide gap right here. And then I came to the realization, hey, that also serves as a mouse guard. So it's actually kind of a nifty little second use for your hive bottoms. In the fall, you can just take your box off, flip your bottom board around, set it down, and boom, you've got an instant winter configuration with, totally open entrance. And I leave it mine wide open in the winter because I want a lot of airflow, because bees build up in front of a entrance reducer and they can clog that up real fast. So I want it wide open so there's always airflow. But mice now can't get in there, and I don't have to worry about the hardware cloth. So I thought that was pretty cool. On the downside, because everything is now closer to your frames, as bees die in the wintertime, they can actually stack up and start stacking up between your frames more easily than it would be if you had the thicker 3/4 of an inch gap now. So keep that in mind if that's the configuration that you want for the winter. But my second tip was cutting off my lower boards to fit my box so I don't have any porches installed. Okay. My last tip, I don't know if it's even a tip. I have not tried this yet, but I am not what you consider a very organized individual. Keeping track, when you get a lot of beehives, keeping track of, when you did what, starts becoming a little jumbled for you. At the time you're doing it, you're like, oh, I'll remember that. And then months go by and you might have forgotten, geez, which queens did I put in which hives? And it dawned on me, actually, one of my followers had asked me a question, and then they said, how did the Michael Palmer queens turn out for you? And I remembered losing one of the hives for the Michael Palmer queen. But I remembered a few of the hives that I put in, and I couldn't remember one of the fourth hive that I put it in, and if it was indeed going, was it going well? And so I had to go back, and luckily I do a lot of YouTube videos. I do a lot of videoing, and some of it doesn't even end up on YouTube. I just have it stored on my laptop because it's just not good enough to put out on YouTube. But I had to review all these hours, and I was looking at the hives, and when they disappeared, certain boxes disappeared, to determine, okay, those queens went in there, and okay, that box isn't there anymore. All of a sudden it just disappeared. Did I move it? Did I, did it die? Did it die out? Now, did I put that Palmer queen in that hive? Is that why that one's doing so well? I found myself scratching my head and going through all these videos trying to figure out what I did with what. Now, when I first started beekeeping, a lot of some of the tips that I got was to take some duct tape and put some duct tape on the hive cover and write it down, and write everything you do down right on there with a vernacular that you can use. You can use sort of like shorthand, just so that you can, enough so that you can discern what you wrote. And you can write, your where you got the queens from, maybe a New River honeybee queen, maybe it was a virgin when you put it in, the day you discovered that it was mated, when you requeened a colony, whatever, when you put a second box on, it doesn't matter, but you're giving yourself a little story on your hive. And I did that, and I had my little Sharpie pen, and I put that information on there. But after a couple of months of rain, and then the winter came, and snow and ice got on the lid. Man, when spring came, I was looking at those, and sometimes the duct tape just got peeled up and wore off and blew away, but most of the time I couldn't read the marker faded out because of the rain and snow and ice and weather and everything, and I was like, man, there's got to be another way. Jason down in Ohio, Jason Chrisman, he uses those livestock ear tags, and he tags the front of his hive with the number, and that's good for numbering your hives, and it's a good system. But you still have to write down what you did. You have to go back home or whatever and write down what you did to each hive. And I'm sorry, but by the time I come back in, I'm sitting there trying to remember, what the hell did I do? What did I do with that hive? What did I do with that hive? I mean, I would like a place, okay, I'm working on this hive right now. This is what I did. But I got to have a way to do that where it's not going to disappear on me, and it's very, very simple and easy to use. So what I'm going to do this year, and this is a tip, and maybe it'll be useful, but I think that this will work, especially with the type of configuration that I use. If you use a wooden inner cover, this will work for that as well. But I am going to, and here's another one, like Michael Palmer, he uses tape too, but I also noticed that some of his hives, he's got it all like a storyboard written on the front of his hives, and he's got, years worth of notes on the front of it, and he's got them crossed out and things like that, and that gets, it looks, it looks like a newspaper ad by the time you get done with it. Front page of a newspaper, you just look at it and you're like, holy cow, trying to figure out what in the hell. And I didn't like writing directly on my hives. I really didn't. What I came up with was this, the inside of the hive lid. It's protected from the weather. I've got an inner cover that protects it from getting too much moisture from the hive building up in there. So what I what I can do is take duct tape now. Whoops. Just take a piece of duct tape, tear it off, and stick it in an area that's easily, I can write on it, but isn't going to get too much traffic from the bees. And I can just stick it on there like that, and then I can write on there, 12, 16, 19, added sugar, to this hive. That's what I did. And you can just keep putting more strips of tape down as you need it, to increase your storyboard. And it should be protected. You've got this down on your hive. Now, can you walk up to your hive and tell, just by looking at it, what it needs or anything like that? No, but when you're inspecting your hives, first thing you do is you lift the cover up to get into your hive, and then you can look. It's like, oh, okay, this one got syrup on such and such a day, or, oh, it had a new queen put in, a virgin put in on this date. It's 2 weeks later now. It's time to check for eggs. But it should be here, and it should be protected from everything. Yeah, like I said, the downside is I can't just walk up to the hive and look at it, but I've had the apps where I can put the stuff in and program it. I am not that organized where I will do that. I know that when I first get something, I start doing it, and it's fantastic, and then I get lapse and I don't do it. I will always have a Sharpie with me out in the field, and I will always have duct tape in the truck. So doing something like this is very, very easy, and I do it as I'm inspecting the hive. So that, I'm going to peel that off right now so I don't do that, but that is my third tip, project tip for you. Real simple, real easy. And if you have a better way of trying to keep track of your hives, shoot me a comment in the comments below. I'd love to read about it. I'm always looking for better ways of doing something. Simple is better, let me tell you. If you have any other comments or questions on the video, leave them below. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed, I hope you do. It's going to be a long winter, but I love working on my little projects during that time, just to keep myself busy. Till next time, happy beekeeping. Take care.